KCIW listeners, and welcome to Curry Café, where producer and host Ray Gary invites a panel of volunteers and guests each week to discuss various topics. Listeners are also invited to join the conversation by texting questions and comments to 541-661-4098. Again, the text line 541-661-4098. Here's Ray to tell us about today's show.
Okay, here on the Curry Café, we talk about all sorts of things, some of it very frivolous and some of it very serious. And today we're going to the serious side of the line. We're going to be talking about domestic abuse and domestic violence and things related to that. And I have a couple of very competent people here to join me, and then I also have Troy. But
what? I'm competent. What?
We're going to go around the table now and let everybody introduce themselves, why they're here, or whatever else they want to say.
Hi, I'm Cheri Salter. I am the new executive director for Ruth's Eye of the Storm. I am gratefully sponsored by St. Timothy's Church. I'm new to the field, but I do have my training, and I'm looking forward to some homegrown local services provided by local people.
Okay.
All right. Hi, my name is Natasha Monet. I am a domestic violence counselor at Harrington House in California. I've been working there for about 4 years. That's our domestic violence resource center over there, and I am an outreach advocate. So I focus on domestic violence education and awareness.
Hello, all. I'm Troy Leah, and I am Crescent City's LGBTQ plus representative, and have some really interesting facts on this particular topic.
Okay. Maybe we could start out by somebody jumping up and saying they want to define what domestic violence or domestic abuse is.
I've got a general definition here that I can read off, and anyone can add on to that if they'd like. But I have abusive behavior in general. So abusive behavior is any sort of aggressive, coercive, or controlling, destructive, harassing, intimidating, isolating, or threatening behavior that an abuser may use to control a domestic partner, a child, or another victim.
I'd like to add that a domestic also would be a roommate situation.
Mm-hmm.
And that, in the LGBT community, the facts that I have uncovered is that around 44% of lesbian and 61% of bisexual women have experienced forms of rape or physical violence from an intimate partner, as compared to 35% of straight women. And there's also 26% of gay men and 37% of bisexual men have experienced forms of rape or physical violence by an intimate partner, compared to 29% of straight men. So the numbers are quite higher in our community, and not a lot of people even realize that.
I think it's important to note when we're talking about domestic violence that, we all know the telltale black eye. That's an easy thing to identify. But threats are often overlooked. Threats to your animal, to your career, to your safety, to your reputation are all signs of domestic violence.
Mm-hmm. I have some types of domestic violence and examples I'd like to share because, you're so right. A lot of people are very focused on the physical abuse. Right. And unfortunately, a lot of legislation is as well. I'm not too familiar with Oregon, but I know in California, there is a huge array that domestic violence falls under. And some of the behaviors, an example would be like physical abuse, like what we talked about. That's like hitting, even reckless driving would be physical abuse, sexual and reproductive abuse. A lot of people know, sexual abuse, rape, but people aren't really, privy what reproductive abuse would be. And that would be like forcing someone to have a child or forcing them to not, things like that, hiding birth control, just being really shady and controlling about somebody's reproductive issues. Psychological and emotional abuse. financial and economic abuse, so like controlling bank accounts, the money, hiding credit cards. Spiritual abuse, that's another big one. So that's like denying freedom to worship, ridiculing religion or, beliefs, and then legal abuse. So that would be like threatening to divorce, or taking custody of the children, or like you said, taking custody of pets, like property ownership.
Right. New to the lexicon of the American people is gaslighting. And I really want to highlight gaslighting. Gaslighting, it can leave you feeling anxious, doubting yourself, unable to trust others.
Can you define that, please? Or were you? I don't know if you were about to. I'm sorry.
Well, I didn't look up Merriam-Webster. My friend here. Gaslighting is manipulating someone by psychological means into questioning their own sanity, denial, blame, switching between charm and rage. If you come into work every day and Troy very quietly says to you, "Those shoes are ugly," and
he doesn't say it, but I know he thinks it.
And every day he does this, and you're like, "Hey, man, And I'm being trivial because that's the easiest example, but
I'm just having to be a shoe person. Yes. How dare you? No.
So, your shoes define who you are, right? And so you're telling, people around, "Hey, does he comment on your shoes? What is this?" And they're like, "Oh, no, that's just him. You're being too sensitive." That's gaslighting.
Okay.
You're not too sensitive. He's
We call
not
it
allowed
shade.
to talk about your shoes, your hiney, your hair.
We
Comes
call
from
it
the
shade.
from the
Shade.
from the movie Gaslight. I guess.
Yes, it does.
Yes.
Yeah, you're right. Something about the lamp. The husband was like
He was
turning the
trying
lamp on.
to convince his wife that she was insane.
Yes,
or something like
he would
that.
light the lamp continually, I think, and she'd be like, "You're lighting the lamp." He's like, "No, I'm not. I'm not." And that's where gaslighting.
Many years ago, I saw it. But anyway. So Troy, while we were talking about shoes, I think I at least to myself, I have for a long time thought that you were a prime suspect in where the ruby slippers were. However, they've just been found, and
They're in the institute, right? What's that institute for famous clothing? Where does that go to? Like where all this stuff from Wizard of Oz went to.
it's in a museum.
Museum,
somewhere.
yes. That's where they are.
Yes.
I don't do red.
Like many millions of dollars they sold for too.
They did. I was in that play, though. I was the
play?
general. I was the Wizard of Oz.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I played the general. I was the general of the Winkies.
Oh, okay. I just saw that movie all the way through for the first time about a week ago.
It's a great
We
movie.
could spend some time talking about the movie instead of what we.
Well, that's about discrimination, and
Yeah.
that movie is really good.
So, I think the obvious question that all of us know the answer to, or the thing you hear all the time, or you see it all the time, you say, "Now, why does she stay with him? What's going? He treats her so badly. He doesn't give her any money.
This is my favorite saying.
Oh, okay.
It's easier to go back to the devil you know than the one you don't.
And it doesn't always have to be he or she.
Yes, I should say that at the beginning here. It's
The person, that's doing the manipulating.
I actually really like that question, and I'd like to talk on it a little bit more.
Please.
The why do you stay? It's a great way to start breaking the stigmatization of our survivors. And just a general statistic, a lot of people don't know this. A person will leave their abuser 7 times, up to 7 times until they fully leave. And that's just because of the cycle of abuse. Your brain is just stuck in this psychological thing. I liked what you said. I have a little personal saying as well, that it is never the survivor's fault that their love was betrayed. It is totally normal. And this is just something that I think and I say. It is totally normal for the human brain to want to love. And it is on the abuser that they took that and manipulated it. It is,
Exactly.
And some other things that I'd like to say is that the question should be reframed. So instead of why did you say, or why did you stay, and victim blaming, that's what we call victim blaming,
Yep.
we would rephrase that to why did the abuser harm them? because let's shift the frame and the responsibility on the abuser rather than on the victim. Yeah. And then another thing I'd like to say is that survivors are not weak or mentally ill for staying. Survivors often stay. People don't realize how really dangerous domestic violence relationships can be. And they stay to protect themselves or even their children. There's a lot more at stake leaving than people realize. So they might be staying for their own safety. Another big thing is a cultural stigma. So in some communities, there's stigmatization about leaving a marriage or relationship, especially for women. And survivors may fear being ostracized. Another big one is economic dependence. So a lot of survivors stay because they don't have the financial resources to leave. I know that, we're representatives of the community and talking about how we have places for survivors to go, but that's not common knowledge. So a lot of the reason these people are not leaving is because they don't know that there's community support. And then that's just what my last point is a lack of resources. So either a lack of knowledge and not knowing that these support systems exist, or them just simply not existing. We're in a rural area.
Especially in these rural areas.
Yeah. We're very fortunate that we have two entities pretty close to each other. Even though you're across the state, we're still here to support our community. But let's think in food desert areas or other areas that
just
don't
out
have
in the
these.
woods. I mean,
yeah.
So many people live out in the forest or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah.
To take that a step further down the line, I was frantically trying to find a statistic on how many times a domestic violence survivor ends up chronically homeless. And I just couldn't find it.
Yeah.
But it's a lot, And so when we talk about, the economic control of it, partner is gainfully employed, maybe even at a corporate job, right? You still have to earn 3 times that monthly rent in order to qualify. So if you're looking for a 3-bedroom house for you and your son and daughter, we're $2,400. I don't know about y'all, but I don't know anybody that brings home $7,000 a month.
Yeah.
I doubt.
We can make it impossible.
Okay, if anybody wants to get in touch, join in this conversation.
Or have a question. Yeah.
Or have a question, we have the phone number that you can text into. We have our operator standing by as always. And the number is 541-661-4098. That's 541-661-4098.
And another thing is, if you're an immigrant from this country, it's even harder for you because you don't know the language, you don't know your surroundings. And I was doing this research too, and out of 71 countries, the domestic violence is rampant against women generally. And in Ethiopia, it's 82% of the women there are abused, and that's just wow, mind blowing. So that's another hurdle that people have.
Sounds like that's become part of the culture there.
Yeah, almost like it's a normal
that
thing, and that's we don't want it to be a normal thing here, no matter what administration says. Okay.
Another thing about not leaving is the victim has frequently been gaslighted for years, being told you're worthless, you're no good, nobody else wants you, or they may have been kept out of knowing how to do things like pay the bills and whatever. Then there's children involved and pets involved and all. It's not just throw your stuff in a car and drive away.
It's not as easy as no.
Yeah.
From 2009 to 2019, there was an Oregon report that said 393 fatal domestic violence incidents resulted in 532 deaths.
Hello.
Deaths in 10 years.
Wow.
That's crazy. So this is why we should be talking about it. We need the resources. We need the fundraising. We need help.
Absolutely.
In all areas, all aspects.
Having Harrington House represented here, another local partner that really is just phenomenal at coming to the call when needed is the Talawadini Nation. They have really got a robust program. And they only require that you be native. You don't have to be Talawadini Nation native.
Which is good to know. Because
Yes.
there's a lot of secrecy in that whole circumstance.
Do you know, either of you, what type of training? Of course, it should be two different places that the police department has in dealing with domestic violence.
So we in Harrington House in California, we really try to outreach with our local partners, and we do have a task force every month, I believe, at the monthly DV task force. I don't go to those. Another coworker of mine does, but there are legal representatives there. I have heard just around the community that there's some high turnover with everybody, so that would include our officers. So for me, what that means is that, we may definitely be training these people, but we're always having new officers constantly, and that's just our community. It doesn't have to specifically do with the police department. But because of that, there may be some uncertainty surrounding how to properly be there for our survivors. So we always have a really good working relationship with the police department. So their normal protocol is to actually reference to us. So we have our police department, they'll drive survivors to Harrington House, talk over the phone with us. So that's normally how our community kind of does that. Same with the hospital. They'll give us calls for any survivors. But for actual training with the officers, I don't know if I have the knowledge to speak on that.
Well, I know that the officers, to become an officer in Crescent City, you need 880 hours of training, okay? Now, as a cosmetologist, I need a minimum of 1,600 to carry a pair of scissors. There's a problem there. Do you think?
I think
that there should be more training, period.
All the way around.
Especially all the way around. It just blows my mind.
the training I got in 1976 when I joined the Alaska State Troopers was in the academy. I don't even know if we spent a whole day, but it was mostly focused on keeping the peace, keeping yourself alive and keeping everybody alive. That was the old classic thing. You don't take the wife into the bedroom to interview her, and of course, what very often happens is you start to take the husband away, and the wife gets defensive, and you wind up fighting two people. So we always responded with at least two people to a domestic violence.
Back in the day when I was...
What'd you do when it was, I'm sorry to interrupt, what'd you do when it was two women or two men? Was there any training for that?
No, there's no training for it. There may be now, but I doubt it. And I never had that situation. Never went.
That's interesting. I'm sorry to interrupt.
I don't know. Do you think it would be different?
Totally.
Really?
The numbers show that it's a lot higher in our community than it is in the straight
But as far as a police officer going to...
How to handle it? I would imagine it would be... I have no idea what they would recommend for different,
Things are a lot different than when I was working. I retired in 96. Things have changed a lot even since then. So there may be training to that.
So in 97, down in Central California, my partner and I, one child in the home, he routinely socked me in my face. I'm no shrinking violet. I would sock him right back and take off running. When the police were called, they called it mutual combat. Would not take a domestic violence report because I didn't lay there and get beat.
In Alaska, we had a policy if we go to a domestic violence, now this just started my last few years, complaint, somebody goes to jail. One of the two people is going to jail. The reason for that is it puts them into the system.
And imagine if the officer then says, are you sure it was that person that did it? Couldn't it have been this other person? Are you sure? And that question and question and question leaves the survivor going, you know what? No, I'm not sure.
Yeah, and it's usually not the victim who calls, it's somebody else. Yeah. But anyway, we have an operator standing by is going a little nuts over there, telling us we have a text.
We do have a text. Yes, we do have a text. It says, I want to thank Cheri and Ruth's Eye of the Storm for filling the gap in South Curry County.
Yay.
Nice.
So there you go.
Applause
And-
for her.
Yeah. And again, if you have comments and questions, 541-661-4098. And thank you to the texter.
There you go.
So when I left my corporate job, I'm sorry.
No.
It was a real struggle. I worked for a local coordinated care organization where I got to use like their money to make a difference in people's lives. And so I really struggled leaving because, I make no
Bones.
about it that St. Timothy's is my fiscal sponsor, getting started. And Ruth's Eye of the Storm, is obviously a biblical reference. I just want to be used well, I
That's
just
what I
want to
think we're
make a
all here.
difference.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, thank you.
It's good that you do, and that's why I work for hospice with Sutter, and that's the joy I get from it. People don't understand, but it's just
It's an honor.
it is. It really is, and I don't get any money for it. It's my time. It's my effort. Let me do what I want to do, and it's a great. Just like anything you're going to volunteer for, to help another human is where we all should be.
Yeah.
Right.
Literally.
Speaking of volunteers,
Yeah.
so I wanted to go into community engagement real quick. If anyone's
Sure.
out there listening thinking, oh gosh, this is right. What can I do about domestic violence? Well,
How
first
can
of
I
all,
help?
we take volunteers anytime at Harrington House. I don't know about you guys, if you guys want to speak on that, but if you wanted to volunteer at Harrington House, you can call our number. It's going to be 707-465-3013. And basically what you do there is we do a little course to become a certified domestic violence counselor, which, woo, awesome. We could always use more of those.
Always.
Then after that, you can answer the hotlines, but mainly you'll just be there helping the survivors through clothing closets, opening the gates, just doing some maintenance tasks around, advocate maintenance tasks around
Right.
Harrington House. And then I have a little page on...
I've actually offered,
Go ahead.
women or people
Yeah.
to change their look because I'm a cosmetologist, so they won't, when they're out in the public, they won't
Mm-hmm.
look like their abuser noticed them as, and that's been really beneficial. So they can be out into the public and they don't have the blonde hair; they've got brown hair, and they dress a little differently.
Hooking them up with a domestic violence program, they could also engage with the address confidentiality program. I'm sure California has one just like Oregon.
Right? Yeah.
So their address is forever here in Oregon. P.O. Box 1 at whatever, Salem, Oregon. And then the state actually routes that mail to the survivor.
Which is the more we can help the survivor, the better.
Yeah. Another way for communities to help if you're just like, oh, how do I help? I don't really want to do the whole domestic violence counselor thing. You can donate to our shelter if you wanted to, or I don't know about Eye of the Storm if you guys take donation. And this is donations of any type. We're talking about like people are coming to start up their lives again. So, we're talking about hygiene products. So I'm not talking, monetary donations. We're talking about clothing.
I am.
We're talking about clothing. We're talking about things for the kids, things for pets. Harrington House is a pet-friendly shelter. So, leashes, dog food. Another way, I just started talking about how our community in Crescent City, we do those monthly domestic violence task force meetings. We also do sexual assault response team meetings. I don't know if that's open to the public, but I would call and see if it is, and if you can get in and hear what's going on in your community in response to domestic violence and sexual assault.
You can get to know more about the need in particular, which would be great. The more we
So-
know, the better.
I'd like to point out something great about Harrington House. They are what is known as a domestic violence shelter, meaning, and the way I understand it, please correct me if I'm wrong, the community actually built that house. The community paid for it. And so it's not a secret. It is not what in the industry they call a, quote, safe house.
Yeah, yeah.
But they do have security on site at night.
Yes, we do. So we don't have security guards, but we do have a lot of security measures. So I appreciate what you said about that it's not a confidential site. So, it's not a typical quote unquote safe house, but that doesn't mean we're not safe. It just means that it is open to the public as the community resource center for domestic violence. So that we're talking about people who are survivors, and then just people who want to know more about domestic violence in general, family members of survivors. And as for the security measures we have a big giant double gate around Harrington House. So that means that there's the gate for the general workers, and then behind that gate is for the survivors. Same with our business center. So half of the building are advocates. Like, we don't have two different business buildings. We have one business building and then one survivor building. It's all on one campus. So advocates are in one area, and then behind a locked door with a code is where the survivors are. As for our security guards, that's me. I'm the advocate there. We have an advocate there 24 hours, and we also have male advocates as well. So
and that, to be clear, that's open to the whole community.
Men and women are allowed.
Yes.
And the LGBT community.
Yes.
Which a lot of people don't realize, because they're in this community. There's nothing for me in particular. It's just for straight couples or those different. You know what I'm saying?
We serve
so
everybody.
It's good. Yeah, it's good that that's put out there. It's everybody.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I will say woman, could be a man too. Somebody comes in, they've got 2 kids, they don't have a job, they don't have any kind of job skills, and they can't go home. 2 kids and a dog.
Can I field what I would like to see for somebody versus what you probably already have in place? So that's part of like my imagining of this service plan, right? Somebody leaving, they need to reinvent, reimagine, or reestablish. And so, the typical, quote, safe house is a period of, 2 to 4 weeks. And then they move to a typical like shelter program. And then it would be transitional housing. I envision for Curry, for Brookings Harbor, a shelter, and then a transitional house where a family / person can go for probably up to a year to start school, to fix their credit, to, all of the chaos, all of that storm that is created in their life. It takes time to reimagine. It takes time to heal.
It doesn't just happen overnight, of course.
Yeah.
No. So like the programs, you can help them go to school if they want to do that. You can help them
Get childcare.
The
Whatever they need. Yeah.
the county mental health programs, ADAPT being our local, they serve a huge a need for. So not only do you need therapy, right, but maybe you've got chronic depression now, or, and so you might need some medication help. But then they've also got, so it's personal therapy, medication management, group therapy, supported education, and supported employment. These are people who are trained to go ahead of you into the field and say, hey, business owner, I've got somebody that maybe isn't super qualified, but if you give them a chance, we'll support them and we'll help them. And you know what I mean? It's like a whole program. And so, like I said, the world that I came from doing care coordination, I'm non-clinical, so I did social care coordination, social determinants of health.
Which is very important.
And so often I would, resource, how do you get your rent paid? How do you get your power paid? What are you going to do to what end? What are you going to do next month? What is the plan? And I think that planning is
setting.
huge.
Yeah.
The SMART goals, SMART is
safe, measure. Oh gosh.
safe, measurable.
The test. What's happening?
No.
I'm
it'll
about
come
Next
to me.
week we'll have some real experts here next week. So
See how it is. See how it is.
safe, measurable, attainable, something and timely. What's the R?
Resource. I have no idea.
Oh gosh.
Oh well.
Do you have an idea what your success rate on that is? It all sounds wonderful for all of us who have pretty much done all that stuff on our own. We've got the education, we learned this, did all these things, but here you have this person who's been downtrodden all their life, maybe comes from a similar home situation. It seems almost insurmountable to be able to
bounce right back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like she said,
Well,
it's,
I assume it's not right back.
Yeah.
it takes 7 times to just leave.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes, yes.
And
You know,
not
so-
only, yeah, like what you were saying, like, a society expects this survivor that has gone through, it doesn't matter how many years, it's, this traumatic event, and to start life tasks as well as undo all that psychological trauma, that's insane. And then let's say it's a single person. Okay, this person has PTSD. We're going to try to unwrap that. Do we have mental health services? Does this person have insurance for mental health services? We're counselors. We can help, definitely. But you also need, people who are actual, sometimes therapists who can listen to that and help unwind. And then on top of that, okay, now this person has to go get a job. Now this person has to learn financial resources. This person has to go get their house. Oh, they have children. They have multiple children. They have a pet. Do they have a car? It's all these factors that unfortunately we can do a lot. And I respect what you do, and I'm sure you respect what I do, but we are not, the end-all be-all in society.
Exactly.
We need a lot of support. And I don't have an answer for that, if I'm going to be totally honest, because we could be doing as much as we can, but we really, really need coordination with society, to be all these resources and help us.
And really what matters is if they can get one person, safe. That's what matters.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's what I always say.
Well,
let's-
one at a time, I guess, yeah. But
Let's talk
Yeah.
about the children too, though, that would potentially be coming out of this, right? We've all heard of the ACEs study, adverse childhood experiences.
Right.
The higher your ACEs score, the more likely you are to have heart disease, cancer. I mean, all of these horrible health outcomes later in life. So adverse childhood experiences are things like, was anyone in your home abused? Was anyone in your home substance use disorder, mental illness? Were they divorced even?
Did you have running
anybody
water?
beat you up?
Yeah.
That sort of thing.
Right.
We don't know what we don't know, right? So if my granddad beat my dad and my dad beat me and I beat my kids or spouse, how do I know that that's wrong if it's all been,
Yeah.
So the restorative justice piece is something
Break the
that's
chain.
important too.
And you're very right about that. And I think that it sounds really weird to say, but some people have to realize that some people don't know any better. And I'm not saying that
Exactly.
it makes it right,
No.
but I'm saying it's here for us to, as a society, not just, me and Cheri going in, as a whole society, starting with education from the youth and breaking, it's called the cycle of violence. We got to break that
Chain.
cycle of violence.
Yeah.
So restorative justice is a thing,
talk about being normal. I worked in small communities for much of my time as a trooper, and this one little town not far from where my house was. I was known there just because there was only 1 or 2 cops. And I went to a domestic violence call one time, and I knocked on the door, and the kids were in the living room sitting around the floor watching television like kids usually do. And, oh, hi, Ray, come on in. Mom's in the bedroom. That's how matter-of-fact this was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they just had a routine at that point.
right?
So, what did those kids grow up with? That's exactly what they grew
Well,
up
so
with.
that's the great
The
thing.
chain you got to break.
You got to break the chain, and then the restorative justice piece, right? So there is, in Jackson County, I met a woman at the Gathering of the People in Agnes. Her name is Stormy. She runs a program for offenders. So, Dad beat me, me beat you. Well, I'm convicted. I now have to take a course to educate me on why it was wrong to beat you. Like, it's a
Right.
whole thing.
Which is unfortunate, of course. Yep.
Well, you know
it's
what?
fortunate that they get to finally learn this is wrong.
Right. But the thing that goes in, when I think of this sort of thing, I think of the people that live in the hills. They're cutting heads off their own chickens to put in the pot. They're growing their own
Right.
vegetables. Like, they don't know what they don't know for a reason.
Right.
I think we can also start early in the schools, and I think that everything kind of ties together. And especially, I think it would be really good exposure if we start with the sex education classes. That would be a perfect time to talk about. Maybe it's too late to talk about mom and dad about it. Well, we could talk about kid about it in the sexual education classes on what a safe relationship is. Because, domestic violence starts with teen violence. It can start really, really young. And teen violence, it is from 12 to 19 years old. And that's actually the statistic. That's unfortunately, the sweet spot where most of the violence happens in that age range.
Yeah.
Specifically, it's more 17 to 19-year-old. But it is teen violence, and we can start there, start talking about...
With the same age group for suicide amongst the LGBT, too.
Yeah. And
that's just a real trying time.
And I feel like that would fit perfectly into that course of, sex education and just general health education, talking about relationship, talking about mental health, and a really user-friendly, a lot of people, they think, oh my God, you want to talk about domestic violence with the kids? They think I'm going to go in there and say, don't hit. That's not what I'm going to say. I'm actually going to talk about boundaries. That's number one, and super easy to talk about. What's a boundary? A boundary is just something that you're comfortable with. Let's say that, hey, I want to kiss you right now. No. You can say that. And if someone disrespects that, that's bad.
That's wrong. That's
wrong, and that's dangerous. And you actually have to be careful of people who want to push your boundaries. And that's a perfect way to start kids realizing what's a violent person? What would exhibit those behaviors?
We
that would be awesome.
Used to train kids. It's okay to say no. Mm-hmm. I don't like this. I'm not comfortable with it. Yeah. And it's kind of surprising that even little girls will feel uncomfortable when they're being sexually abused, even though Uncle Bill or whoever.
There's still a big portion of, hug your auntie. She's leaving now.
Exactly.
Hug your grandpa. Yeah. No, if the child is not comfortable, the child is not comfortable at 3, at 14, at 20.
I used to have a aunt that came to visit, and she was usually drunk, and she had all this incredible makeup, which little kids just love, and she had to give me a big kiss every time she came. But I could have been trained to say no. Of course, that wasn't a big deal. Right. It was over with pretty quickly. But okay, if you want to participate in some way, we got a number you can text 541-661-4098. We have operators standing by to read your text, and we'll read it online and make you a famous person, and we'll give our operators something to do. 541-661-4098. Surely you have something to say.
So I wanted to share a short story. Like I said, I left my corporate position. I have a 18-year-old daughter. Sorry. She had a very robust social life, always on the go, taking her dog, beach parties, whole nine. Late October, she was at one of these beach bonfire parties when a male human was pushing and shoving and screaming a female human whom was 100 pounds soaking wet. My daughter stepped in and grabbed the young male's shirt and tried to pull him down, and he clocked her in her jaw, broke her jaw on both sides, clean through. Finding the proper law enforcement agency was the first task, right? Because it was on a beach, so that's a state park. Yep. So it wasn't in Crescent City, so it wasn't city, it wasn't county, it was... So finding that, then navigating the healthcare system, the specialty care. Of course, we started at the local emergency room where she was referred. But the second break wasn't found until we finally got to Eugene to the specialty surgeon. 3 teeth, 2 plates, food through straw all through Christmas and Thanksgiving and all of it. Lost every friend she had.
Hopefully he was arrested.
And that's why she lost every friend she had. I insisted that he be held accountable.
Absolutely.
Of course.
And, they
weren't really friends if they didn't hang around.
And as adults, we
know better.
We know that, right?
That's not
but when you go from a robust social life where you're on the go and go and go to nobody. And because we said, listen, if you're going to maintain that friendship, really don't call.
Yeah.
Not only navigating the health and but the law. This person would come to court with a big grin on their face. Parental figures, never apologies. We would describe the amount of damage, and there wasn't even a grimace. And so, luckily, I was, the judge allowed us to do the victim impact statements.
Thank God. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? And, I was able to share that there were no less than 20 local youth on the verge of adulthood that were going to learn one of two things if he went soft on this particular crime. If they were girls, if the females that are about to be adults, they were going to learn, if I'm mouthy, I'm going to get hit in my face and it's okay. And the boys, they were going to learn, as long as I'm willing to do a month in jail, I can smack a mouthy broad in her mouth. I am very grateful that the sentence is what it is.
Justice was.
They're so close to being adults that I would have preferred to see this person prosecuted as an adult.
Yeah.
But, that being said, the judge was really caring.
I'm sure it wasn't the first time this individual has done something.
Initially they were making it out like this person had never done anything. But by the end, we heard that, services were exhausted kind of stuff. So
I don't really have a lot of statistics on that in particular. It's just kind of what I've seen. But I do see that a lot, and it is shameful. I see that in whether it be, the socialization of young adults or full adults. A lot of times there is abuser apologists out there. That's a bad thing, guys, by the way. Don't be an abuser apologist. That just means, I'm not just talking about domestic violence. If anybody is accused and you don't see it, right, of being violent or shows any sign of violence, that's a bad person to be around, right? You should be a survivor advocate. And when somebody comes out and says this person did something bad to me, you believe them and you support them and you stop talking to the person who's an abuser. I see that a lot, and I don't know why it is like that, but it's a shame.
One of the other children there actually said that her parents said, "What'd you do?" Because she was also struck.
Yeah.
The parents said, "What did you do?" That's the education that we need in these communities. It is never okay for somebody to hit you, ever, for any reason.
You dressed a certain way, or there's just really no reason at all.
Never.
It sounds like she didn't lose much if she lost friends who that was the extent of that
word friend. Those aren't friends.
We're in a
Friends
small
help
community.
you.
Yeah.
And no, she actually drove herself away. She pulled over like so many blocks down the road and let somebody else drive but physically drove herself away because nobody else was.
I'm a little curious about this jurisdiction thing you mentioned. Because it was on the beach, the city police couldn't do anything?
Correct. It was not the city of Crescent City.
Okay.
Did they
respond in an emergency situation?
Well, yeah, dialing 911. Yeah. And actually being here, I don't think I even did 911. I think I called Crescent City Police Department, who then transferred me or stayed on the line with me. They were all very kind.
Yes.
But it was
a process.
The process of finding the right law enforcement really is indicative of how the whole care went, right? It was a struggle from second one. And
that's the saddest part of it all.
Right? I just don't know how to fix that, though.
Was it sheriff jurisdiction then? Is that?
No, not county. It was actually a state parks.
Yeah.
What do they call them? A parks ranger.
Okay.
That came and took the report.
Or was it 3 of those on the whole coast or something?
Well, in Crescent, actually, and I believe he came from Humboldt.
Huh.
Down to Del Norte.
I'm surprised there's not a shared jurisdiction. Like we had in Alaska, state troopers have jurisdiction in the national parks.
Well, that's the same here in Curry, though. There is no shared jurisdiction, right?
Yeah.
In the county of Curry, there is one 24-hour law enforcement response, and that is Brookings. And they are amazing. The cooperation and the coordination and the care that is happening out of our Brookings Police Department right now is beautiful.
That's
beautiful.
Good. Very good to hear.
That's good to hear.
But no other city. Gold Beach, I don't know what their hours are, but it's not nights and weekends. Port Orford, I believe, has a police force, but again, it's not 24 hours. So the sheriff is the rest of that county, right? Well, we have how many currently working sheriff's officers?
And that's not 24 hours either, is it?
They are.
Oh, they are 24 hours?
Yeah, but there's like 2 or 3 for the whole county, and we're a very long county.
That's not enough.
It's not enough. I went to a substance use disorder kind of community meeting, Coos and Curry kind of thing, and the one sheriff officer was there, and I was like, so listen, I live in Brookings. We know that Harbor is unincorporated, so Brookings police don't go to Harbor. That's sheriff's jurisdiction. So let me ask this. If I am stabbing my husband one night and I live out on Benham, are you going to come? And they're like, well, if there's not somebody else stabbing their husband, that we're already there. So like they'll respond for serious.
Emergency stuff.
But
Serious.
nothing,
What
right,
would domestic violence fall under?
life-threatening.
Serious?
It wouldn't
Well, that's
depending on what kind of serious.
it depends on what kind of serious. I think
So if I understanding that it could take like a really long time for someone to get, that's scary.
You know what? I've actually experienced that in Crescent City, because I own multiple homes in the city, and if I'm in one location and I've done this, called for emergency services, and didn't get, I called 4 times in a row, did not get any kind of, oh yeah, they'll be there. But when I'm at another location,
And it's all because of the jurisdiction?
where you live. And it was another location, they were there within seconds. And it was totally a different type of incident, but still, it was like, wow, that's prejudice right there.
even when you get to, okay, the police come and there's been a report made, and let's say you weren't born and raised here, and you just want to go back to Texas where you're from.
Or wherever, yeah.
Or where, yeah.
Right.
Assuming that there is a safe place for you to land. I don't know about Harrington House, but as far as Ruth's side of the storm, if I can verify you have somebody to get to, I will move heaven and earth for you to get a ticket to go home.
We have some services. I don't really want to say it out loud because they've been very kind to us, and it's on a very emergent basis. But we do have some services to get people back to where they're from in situations like that. It's pretty awesome, and we've used them a couple times. It depends on how far the mileage, and this is just for survivors of immediate domestic violence who, just happen to be in this area, and they go, I want to go home back to...
Or sexual assault.
Yeah, I need to go home. I need to go to my family members. We'll call this people up, and most likely they will be able to take them, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's great that you're here. I mean, seriously, versus having no services.
It's kind of unimaginable, unbelievable, or we can't relate to people who are in that situation. You can talk to them, or you can see the story or something, but all of us, I assume, have reasonably normal lives and houses and jobs and things like that. And
But
to be
3 out of the 4 are probably victims of this.
right, but it's hard for us to imagine that here I am, I can't go home because he's going to kill me. I have my 2 kids and my cat or whatever, and you just like the world is gone. I often wonder what would I do if my house was in a forest fire and gone, and I have nothing, and I would still have an income. I wouldn't have that, but I don't know
You
what
need resources.
Yeah.
And those resources require money.
Yep.
And so this
And
would be my
people.
pitch. Donating to the United Way is always good. Donating to Red Cross, always good. Humane Society, always good. Please,
Just being active.
please, people, consider donating to your local domestic violence, sexual assault, human trafficking program.
Okay, so since you brought that up, and you've mentioned a couple of times that you're working with St. Tim's, so would we, if I wanted to write your organization a check, I would give that to you?
Ruth's Eye of the Storm.
Okay, and who do we write that to?
Ruth's Eye of the Storm.
I'm sorry, I'm having trouble.
Ruth's Eye of the Storm.
Okay,
Right? Or if you got clothes or whatever. I just did that with all my jackets. donated it to them.
I've had a couple of Mary Kay distributors recently bringing
Awesome.
Mary Kay for folks because, I mean, I think there are a lot of people out there that do recognize that people are starting over. I just don't know that they realize that still requires this long at minimum in some sort of shelter. Here in Brookings Harbor, we don't have any sort of shelter
Which is scary.
for any reason.
Okay, but you are working on getting one.
If I had enough to buy a house, I would put it somewhere in Brookings Harbor and I would open it for survivors of.
So is this a pipe dream, or are you just ridiculously out of that, or
Well, I
is
do
there a
have-
possibility that you could get rent or something at a
Absolutely.
reasonable price?
Absolutely.
Do you have something
So
you're thinking about, or?
current rent or lease on a 3-bedroom can be $1,800 to $2,400. You know, quick math, that's about $35,000.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think it's I am good at begging on other people's behalf.
Or what if
And
somebody
so-
just owns a home and they wanted to not donate it to you, but let you use that as
Absolutely.
something like that?
Absolutely. You know, fraternal organizations are often overlooked. The Masons, the Oddfellows, the Elks, the Lions, the Rebeccas, you know, and typically these organizations have a favorite charity. You know, I know that the Lions and what the Lions and the Elk do here in Brookings, but I haven't found the Rebeccas here, the Oddfellows here. So if y'all are out there, please call Cheri at Ruth's Eye of the Storm, 541-254-9030.
How about an address if somebody would want to send you some money? Do you have a
401 Fir,
wait a minute, write this down. 401.
Fir, F-I-R Street.
And now you can get in contact with us here.
I'm sorry.
They can get in touch with you here if they missed that information.
Yes.
Oh, absolutely.
Because we have your information.
That address is actually St. Timothy's.
Oh, okay.
Currently,
Then it would send it to St. Tim's attention.
attention, Cheri, yeah. Currently, Father Bernie has been gracious enough to hire me on part-time so I can still pay my mortgage.
Oh, that's good.
So I'm part of their advocacy team. For
I don't know what this community would do, or at least the poor people or set upon people or whatever, if it wasn't for Bernie.
You know, St. Tim's gets kind of a blanket judgment. Oh, they help the homeless.
Yeah, if
you know,
it wasn't for them, we wouldn't have any homeless because they'd have no. Yeah.
Right. But here's the thing: if you're hungry, you don't have to be poor to be hungry.
No.
Right.
You know, and I
Or a
can't
need.
tell you how many times I go and eat there or have a need. You know, if you had surgery and you can't go to work to pay your rent, who are you going to call? You know, in Brookings, you go to St. Timothy's.
And we have
Although-
one, our Methodist church on 8th Street. That's that's a safe
that-
house. And
Is that Mission Possible?
the church?
Yeah, they've run a program.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I
That's
think it
for
might-
our community and all the whole community, really.
Cool.
That's where you go to. It's a great safe house and place to find resources for anything that you might need.
Yeah.
Great people that are there.
My board member that's out in the waiting room here says, make sure to say that I did receive a small grant from the Community Advisory Council of All Care Health. They're one of the local coordinated care organizations, Medicaid organ. And so she says, make sure to talk about the grant money and how we need more.
Yeah.
So if you didn't get that address where you want to send those checks to, it's Ruth's Eye of the Storm, 401 First Street here in Brookings, and that would go to, on the envelope, put attention Eye of the Storm, because it would go to Father Bernie's. And I think everybody could reach into their checkbook and come up with a couple of pennies to send. And we have a text.
Yes, we do. Another text from our friend Billy. And she asked, Cheri, I'm assuming this is for you, has a question. Is there still? My mic's off.
Okay, we're going to try this again. We have
Okay, hold on.
little technical difficulties.
How about now? Okay.
There it is.
So sorry.
Our operators are not always the highest caliber.
I'll refuse my pay. So this is from our friend Billy. is there still a shelter in Gold Beach for abused women?
So currently, no. The Oasis Advocacy and Shelter Program did dissolve early 2024, which was kind of the catalyst of me ending my corporate job and stepping into this field. There will be that house again. So the Department of Justice, Oregon Department of Justice and Oregon Department of Human Services have granted the domestic violence sexual assault grant money to a Coos Bay program, the SAFE Project. And they have recently announced that they will open that house summer-ish. And it is absolutely needed. We hope, anybody doing this work, man, they've got to have hearts of gold. They do. So hopefully that house is a huge success. Mm-hmm. But I live in Brookings. Brookings Harbor is dropped so often by services by and large. Mm-hmm. You hear about programs run out of other counties, and I go to Father Bernie, why don't we have this? Why don't we have that? Well, the community action agency or this or that, so I want to serve Brookings Harbor people.
Mm-hmm. Does your social services offer, I don't know if you know the answer, do they offer any sort of bus passes that take them from this county over to
a county that be able to help them? Yeah.
Yeah. I know that you're trying to put this up, and that's awesome. Is there any services that would take them to, maybe if they're applicable, to Harrington House? For the Harrington House is emergency domestic violence help. We're a shelter for emergency domestic violence. I'd like to stress that again. Is there any services that would be able to take them over there if they needed immediate help?
Well, so if they call me, as a parishioner at St. Timothy's Church, I have every right in the world to pick up somebody in my faith and take them where they need to go. Okay. That being said, we do have a number of Curry County bus passes and then Del Norte County bus tokens so that when they get to Smith River, they can go the rest of that way.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's great.
That's good to know. Definitely.
I know you guys mentioned earlier, you two were talking about how difficult it is to navigate the legal system, especially if you are a survivor of any sort of violence. I just like to say that Harrington House, one of our services, is offering legal services. Specifically, we help with restraining orders. And again, anytime I'm talking about Harrington House, we are focused on intimate partner violence. So yes, domestic violence, specifically intimate partner violence, where you're experiencing violence by a romantic partner. And we can help you with kind of navigating some of the legal system.
Wow, your very particular words are making my buzz. So if they're a roommate, you won't help?
Not for Harrington House, no. Just based off of our funding, it's intimate partner violence. So yes, absolutely, domestic violence encompasses all sorts of that, but for us, intimate partner only.
Okay, because he said 2 minutes, I want to say Ruth's will help everybody to the best of our ability. Your people will be our people.
And speak up.
That sounds very good.
Get help.
It sounds like this is a very worthwhile organization.
It is desperately needed for our community and at large.
And I'm a volunteer at Harrington if they'll have me.
Yeah, of course. Of course we'll have
you. Yeah, I'm looking at that too, yeah.
See you there.
Yeah.
You
I love it.
realize this is a volunteer organization right here at KCIW. And you are going in direct competition with us for volunteers.
I do, yeah.
Real quick, I'd like to put out the National Domestic Violence Hotline. I'm going to say that real quick. National Domestic Violence Hotline is 800-799-7233. Again, that's 800-799-7233. Real quick, there's another one called domesticshelters.org. If you search that up, it'll give you a database, and you can search local shelters on that.
Right. And there's a hotline for trans and LGBT community hotlines. You just got to Google it, and it comes right up. There's help out there. Just reach out and grab it. That's all we can ask for, really.
Okay, must be very close to the end.
Oh,
And I want to thank everybody for coming in and joining us today and
well, thank you for talking
filling
to
us up with a lot of good information.
Thanks for being easy to talk to.
Thank you.
me. These great people. Yeah.